Hello and welcome to Scrum Byte. Today we are going to talk about an important topic, which is understanding ITSM Value Stream Framework. If you have already been exposed to ITIL 3, ITIL 4 is a big jump and it's been around for quite some time. And the key thing out there is going to explain and introduce the concept of value stream. So let's look into it. What exactly is it? So first, what's a value stream? So it's a complete journey. Basically what it means is that we talk about not just processes, which is basically what was there in ITIL 3, but here it is the complete workflow, starting from the request to fulfillment and also the feedback. So what you're trying to do is you're connecting different departments, because when you have to do a particular task, it doesn't involve only one particular person or a particular department. There are many departments which are involved in completing some specific tasks. So value stream talks about all these departments, how they are interconnected, and try to understand why a certain process is working or not working. And if you are able to completely capture how it starts and how it ends, then that is basically nothing but a value stream. So instead of looking at incident management, change management, service request as separate functions, what we do here is, in a value stream, we are trying to see how they actually complement each other, and how it is actually ultimately going to help the user experience. So this way what happens, ultimately you have to find that the user is going to be happy, right? So we want to find out what is it that's making him unhappy. That is, trying to find the gaps. Where are the steps, which is causing a problem to the user? And if we have to decide, okay, we have to automate certain things, we have to remove certain bottlenecks, we'll do all that. So if you are able to do the whole thing, then that's nothing but a value stream. So it's nothing but an end-to-end process. So let's see a little bit more and dig into it deeper. So let's continue here. So what is happening is, we'll look at a very simple example. The first one is that there is a request of the user. So an employee needs to get access to a HR application, and normally you submit this kind of a request through a service portal. Now what happens, as soon as the request is received, there is some kind of a triage. Now that means some kind of a meeting, and the service desk will basically log the request. It will categorize the request depending upon who is asking for it, and it will assign that thing to a specific team. Okay, this guy needs a login ID, he needs to get access to very specific parts of the application and so forth. So this goes to the access management team, and they will review the eligibility depending upon the user. If he's a manager, he'll get access to a lot of dashboards and things like that. If he's a regular user, then he'll be allowed to enter purchase orders or sales orders or something like that. So those specific applications will be given as a permission to be accessed by the particular user. So those kind of things will be done by the access management team. Then the system will configure the permissions and it will actually grant the access. So what happens after this? The user will receive the access, they'll have to test the login, and they'll have to confirm the success. So what has to happen after that? Okay, it is successful, then some kind of a feedback happens, a survey is sent or whatever. And you get a measurement, he's happy with the service or it didn't work or whatever it is. Let that person give their verdict on how the service happened. And this is actually captured by the service desk. So when you actually map the entire flow from request to feedback, you actually map the value stream for that service. So it becomes easy to see delays, where there is a opportunity for a automation, and you can also see where there are multiple duplicate steps. So for example, let's say that the approval went to two different people for a simple thing like access for a purchase order entry. So, you can avoid that and say that, okay, I don't need this. I probably only would require something that one person can automate or can grant permission to. So that way you can reduce the time. Let us now look at it pictorially. Here on the particular slide you can see a diagram here. So it basically starts with a customer need. That's nothing but a demand. So here we are saying that user is submitting a request. But what I want you to concentrate here more on is the one at the bottom, metric to track, request volume. So we are approximately expecting around 350 access requests per month. Here we are also tracking for the next one. The metric is average logging in time. So for example, it takes around 2 minutes for a request. And what happens is when they are accepting requests, there is a accuracy of categorization. That means, for some users the categorizing may not be assigned correctly by the service desk. So we are expecting that 95% is the accuracy of the categorization. For fulfilling the request, we are saying that, okay, processing time is taking around 15 minutes for a standard request and the approval cycle time is 1 hour. And then ultimately the delivering the outcome to the user. Here the metric team is saying that the metrics is the lead time from request to delivery is actually 4 hours. And the success rate of, the first time pass completion, that means when a person submitting the request to getting the final approval, it is taking around 98% of the persons who are submitting the requests are able to pass successfully. And ultimately, there is a CSAT, which is nothing but the customer satisfaction score, and that is nothing but capturing out of 5 what is your specific input, and the user will say that I am happy 4.5, 4.7, 5, whatever it is, and that is averaged out to 4.7. So here rework rate for incorrect access, like 2% is targeted, needs to be reduced to 1%. That means initially what is happening, 2% of the requests are incorrect, and for whatever reason the access was not provided properly, and that now needs to be reduced to 1%. So this is the things that you are actually going to see in a simple example. This is what you need to capture. Now that we have a basic understanding, let us look into more specifics. So what is a value stream in ITIL 4? So a very clear definition. What it says is that it is nothing but a series of steps every organization should undertake to create and deliver products. So it is not just services alone, it is also products and services to service customers. To customers, that is users or organizations or anybody. So in ITIL 4, what it means is that value streams represent workflows. We already talked about it, that move from demand or opportunity. So obviously what is happening is every company improves when they are having more work. So the idea is that you create more work, then what happens? You have more opportunities. So you have a ERP system, you are trying to create an ERP system. So what happens is that is creating work. So because you finished the ERP system, that is an opportunity for you to consult or to sell or do whatever it is, right? So there is a value at the end of it. So here it's very clear that the starting point is demand and the opportunity is nothing but the ultimate value that we are going to see. So there are 6 generic activities in this service value chain. We don't call it just value chain. It's called as value streams, are also called as value chains. In different combinations, they are called as service value chain, SVC. So we'll see what is that. So here nothing but we already talked about, right? As series of steps that an organization undertakes to create and deliver products and services to customers. That's what the definition is. So this service value chain, what exactly is it? So there are basically 6 activities. So first thing is you need to plan, you need to improve, you need to engage, you need to design and transition the design. You have to build it, and finally you deliver it and you have to support it. So what happens here is that multiple streams are available. Organizations can define multiple value streams depending upon the services, demands, context, etc., whatever it is. Different types of workflows follow different types of routes. So the whole idea here is that you need to create these kind of value streams. You need to create these multiple streams. So it's nothing but a scenario. So my scenario here is that I need to provide a login access to a user. So what is the scenario there? A user has to come, he has to request for a login access, and finally he will get the login access. So there are multiple steps which are there in between actually requesting it and actually getting it and being satisfied with it, right? So that way what happens is you can create multiple types of scenarios, and each of these scenarios become a stream, a value stream. And for completing this scenario, you need these activities, these 6 generic activities. So instead of having kind of rigid templates, etc., they are value streams are nothing but something that is adapting to scenarios. So this is what happens in actual business, and value streams is nothing but replicating that business. So we can look at some examples here of various types of value streams. A new service delivery. So some new service is being provided that, okay, for all your PF or your social security activities, you can, contact the help desk and they will provide some help to you. So that's a new type of a service, right? So from requirements to design, build, delivery to value creation. So what happens, you will know what exactly is your balance in your PF or in your social security, etc. for the year. The next one example is service change enablement. So here managing a change safely from demand to implementation. Somebody is asked that I want to make a change in how this particular process works. I am not happy with it. So that change is accepted and you want to make that change successful. So that is nothing but service change enablement. Release and deployment. So you are releasing a new version of the software. So how do you do it? So had problems earlier when you were trying to release the software, and now you're trying to make sure that this time the release goes perfectly. The other one you can look at is incident resolution, how you are quickly able to restore a service. So something happened earlier wherein a server failed and it actually made a problem for a lot of applications. So you learned from that and now you are able to take care of it more effectively. Request fulfillment is nothing but what we talked about until now, right? Handling standard user requests like passwords, access, etc., whatever it is. Similarly, we have problem management. So there are certain problems that are occurring regularly, and you want to kind of make sure that those kind of problems should not happen again. So you go into problem management and you're trying to go to a root cause and trying to fix it. Knowledge enablement is another area. Here basically what you're talking about is building self-service capabilities, so that you don't have to ask anybody. You can go and refer to a blog, you can go and refer to a help topic, or how to a video, a training session, or whatever it is. Similarly, you have finally a continual improvement, how your organization continuously improves by itself. So these are different types of examples of value stream. Now that we have looked at some of the examples, Let us see what are the key shifts that have happened between ITIL 3 and 4. So the key thing here is that everything has moved from processes to practices. So in ITIL 3 what has happened is there are many processes. ITIL 4 emphasizes practices and value streams that deliver end-to-end value. So you can see here in this diagram there is a demand, and ultimately what happens, you have all these 6 different generic processes that we talked about: engage, plan, design and transmission, obtain, build, deliver, support, improve, product and services, going to value, and it repeats itself. Okay, so always remember that every time there is a demand, it ends with a value. Okay, so that is the most important thing. So here you have to focus on the entire life cycle, wherein it's just not the processes, practices and all that, but you are involving people, the stakeholders, everybody should be there. Important thing to notice here is the what is called as agile integration. So as you know, many of these concepts of demand and value are derived from something called as lean management, which is a separate topic by itself. You need to go and study it, but the basic idea in lean is that how do you avoid waste. The other important thing is DevOps and the way of thinking agile. So incrementally, you are doing something in a very short time. Probably if you are familiar with agile way of thinking, there's a different way of thinking. So it is nothing but flow, reducing waste, shift left, continuous improvement. Shift left is nothing but trying to eliminate certain processes. Reduce waste is, if there is no value, forget about it. So that's how the key shift is from ITIL V3 to ITIL 4. And here, like we already talked about, value streams are per service or per scenario. Instead of mapping every single process, we don't need to do that, right? So now we can focus on, okay, this is the scenario, how do we fulfill that scenario and see what is the value we are getting out of that. And here the entire focus is on customer. The customer can be your company's user, a normal user like you or me or anybody else, or it can be a customer itself, somebody you are servicing outside. It can be internal, it can be external. So we'll see what are some of the critical improvements in ITIL 4. So like we're kind of repeating ourselves, but I think it's good to get a proper summary of this. It's an end-to-end workflow. It starts with a demand, ends with a value, focusing on the entire life cycle. We already talked about it. So we are not talking about something like a isolated, how do you do ticket handling? No, because it is not just a incident alone that you're just capturing and taking care of. It's the entire process that we have to focus on. Agile and DevOps integration, we talked about it. So what it is doing is, ITIL 4 is it's bridging the gaps. It is, you're bringing in lean, you're bringing in DevOps thinking with value flow optimization, nothing but reducing waste, etc. and all that. This is all built into it in the ITIL 4. Flexibility. So here, as we already talked about, we are focusing upon a service or a scenario. So instead of very rigid processes, we are saying that, okay, how do we move through this scenario by utilizing various services or different practices that are available, and we are going to join them together in different ways. No value stream is similar to the other one. There will be some kind of a variation. And the important thing here to notice is that built-in improvement. That means there is already something that you have to build in the value stream which includes improvement steps. That means you always have to look out for how things can be improved, how it can constantly be improved. What happens is technology changes, new kind of technology comes, you can probably get something done much faster because of a server output, or a new hardware has come which can calculate faster. So these are all improvements, right? So this whole value stream will make sure that any new things that are coming in will somehow be included as part of this value stream designing process, so that improvements are built into the process itself. It is not okay, I bought a new server, now how should I kind of integrate with it? That's not what it is about. So these are some of the key elements of a value stream. You have a demand trigger, then you have to define the steps, the activities, then you have value adding versus non-value. So what happens is, many times, okay, this is very nice to have, but what happens ultimately, you really don't need it, because you may have a beautiful output that looks very nice and pretty, but nobody is really interested in it, or they may look at it and the person who created it may feel very happy about it, but it's really of no use. So from a stakeholder's perspective, you always have to look at, okay, is this something that is delivering value or not? The other thing is, a stream should flow smoothly. So bottlenecks, delays, handoffs, they all add costs, and they reduce the value. So delays are nothing but, handoff means, I think you understand, right? Okay, my process is over, I hand it over to the next service. So if that person is not taking it in the right time, if they are not having proper procedures, standard operating procedures, then things will be pretty bad. So you got to make sure that the flow is smooth. Okay. Practices and processes. So steps drawn on idle practices rather than isolated processes, integrating end-to-end flow. And just to talk about this one, let's look at this diagram here. This is nothing but the ITIL 3, wherein there were 25 service lifecycle processes. And here in ITIL 4, there are 34. Okay. And it is basically categorized only into three general practices: general management practice, service management practice, and technical management practice. So this is how it has been described as. So we'll go back. The thing is that you always have to measure a value stream with, okay, is the end person getting his value or not? Restored service, it can be a fulfilled request, a new capability, some whatever, it can be any of those things, but there has to be a very measurable value that is being provided. And ultimately you also have to have an improvement feedback loop. Okay, has this thing worked successfully? Why it has not, if it has not worked? So now we'll look at why value streams do matter. So look at it from three perspectives. From a ITSM toolkits perspective, Shift's perspective from process boxes. You had all these process boxes to a flow that delivers value to the stakeholder. And this is nothing but, this is aligning very clearly with a continuous improvement mindset. You need to have that mindset always. So when you are looking at, okay, there is a lot of manual processes or whatever it is which is basically holding up your value stream, you need to think about, okay, how I can get AI into the picture. It will help you in deciding, okay, this is the place that I can do some automation. I can introduce some bots here, or I can add some RPA, robotic process automation, things like that. And this is going to help you in reducing the lead time to complete something. From a consulting perspective, it is like, okay, how can you provide a way to show an end-to-end value? How can you point out waste? What are the metrics? How can you measure the proper lead time? And these kind of proper metrics will give you a very proper understanding of what is my process, what is my problem. And that is good for you because that is demand. And that way you're always creating value. Like I already told you, right? Demand creates value. I would like to pause here and ask you to look through this particular slide. These are the 8 steps to map a value stream. And I would like you to pause this particular slide and have a look at it. I hope you looked at it. So here there are key things here which are very self-explanatory. I think you would have understood it by reading through this one. It is nothing but identifying the value stream, finding the trigger. That's very important. How can you start a value stream? So you need something that triggers a demand, right? So that's what it is. That's the trigger. What are the high level steps? What are the low level steps? That means details of that high level steps. Trying to identify waste. You have to propose improvements always. You have to capture and define the metrics that you want to do. And finally you need to govern and improve. So here is an example for that. You are identifying the value stream. The value stream is service request fulfillment for end user, access to HR application. So this is the scope. This is what you are trying to map. What is the trigger? So how does this demand happen? Employee has to submit a request. Please provide access. So then what is the value outcome? You should always have some outcome for every trigger, right? User receives access, verifies it works and reports satisfaction. What are the high level steps? So here you can see we've already gone through this multiple times. So this is just a way of writing it down. You can always pause the video to read through it, but I'm not going to repeat this. It's the same thing. And then here you see detailing each of the steps. User submits, service request management practice. So you're actually identifying the practice and you're saying that the user has to fill a form via the portal. Log and trial. So here it is the service desk which is validating, which is categorizing the request, and it is assigning to access management team. Here it is reviewing and approving. Who is doing that? The access management team. Checking the eligibility, notifying the approver, approve or reject, depending upon whether that particular person is actually eligible or not. Identity and management team will then configure the request. It will provision the access and update the rights. Now we go to identifying the waste and bottleneck. Oh, okay, waiting. User takes around 1 hour even for standard access. This is what's happening. Rework. 5% of the requests returned due to incomplete form. That means the user, when they are actually submitting the request, has not done it properly. The other problem that I noticed is that there are 3 handoffs between teams that are causing delays. So here there are a lot of manual steps instead of automation. So this is what I have identified as waste and bottlenecks. Now you have to propose improvements, right? Once you know what it is. So here you are saying automate provisioning for standard roles. So if that person is a regular data entry operator, this is a standard role, right, for that person. So you know what to do for that. You don't need to worry about it. Automatically give whatever permissions are required. The other thing is, when you are submitting a form or a template or whatever it is for them to fill up, try to fill up as much as possible so that that person doesn't make any mistakes. So it is already pre-populated. So that way what happens? There is lesser chance for rejection at a later start. Now you can eliminate the unnecessary approvals for role risk access. So you don't need to go through multiple chains of command for saying that, okay, I have to approve, then somebody else and somebody else. You don't need to do that. So introduce auto routing based on request types. Set some SLA based triggers to escalate stuck requests. So, SLA what it is, right? So here the idea is that you have to expect some value. What is the value? Okay, reducing lead time from 4 hours to 1 hour. Rework from 5% initially to 1%. So that should be some kind of improvements. Here, define some metrics: lead time, processing time, throughput, first time completion rate, what is the CSAT score. So these are the different types of metrics that you need to have. Then obviously the continual improvement, monitoring all these things, lead time trends, reviewing recurring issues, implementing automation, and so forth. So these are different things that you can look at. So I think this is a full example of how you can do a request. I hope you understood until now. You can always pause the slide and have a look at it. You can go back further to get a clearer idea. Now let us look at another way of the same thing in a different type of a format. So these are the 4 steps that you can kind of reduce it into: identifying the customer trigger, mapping the workflow end to end, capturing the people and systems, that is, you are actually saying that which person needs to perform what task and which department or which area they belong to, and ultimately you are measuring times. What is the processing time, finding the metrics, etc., whatever it is. So these are the basic steps to map any kind of a value stream. So now the question is, how do you actually create a value stream? So let's look at that. The first thing is, you always need to capture what is the current state, that is before. So here what you do is, you always identify what is the waste. Approval time is actually consuming 70% of the total delay in this work stream, in this value stream. 5% of requests bound back due to missing information. Manual steps are slowing down the access creation. So this is where you need to focus upon. This is how you define. And here you define the future state. Create simplified optimized version, auto approval for low risk roles. It's not going to solve all the problems, but at least for low risk roles, you're going to have a smoother workflow. Once this thing is settled, then you can look at the more complex ones for the higher level role. Pre-fill request templates, we already talked about it. Automated provisioning for standard access. So this is the outcome that you are talking about. Lead time 4 hours to 45 minutes. Rework 2% to 0.5%. Satisfaction 4.7 to 4.9. So this is what is the expectation. So now we'll talk about creating an action plan. So you have to convert your insights to action. So whatever value streams insights are there, they have to be converted to some kind of a practical improvement roadmap. And that has to finally transform to some measurable results. So you need to have an example action plan, implement automation, update SOPs, train service desk, introduce weekly reviews, set up dashboards, for real-time monitoring, etc. Continuous improvement, we talked about it multiple times. Value stream becomes a living framework for ongoing optimization, not a one-time exercise. So it is not something that is optional. It is something that you have to continuously keep on working upon. So we look at some of the common pitfalls. So one of the things is that you try to map things very narrowly. So that means you are looking at something which is a very small portion and you are missing the bigger picture. So what happens is, because of this, one part of it may become very successful, but overall the flow will not be successful. So what item 4 it does is it's telling you that it emphasizes on the end-to-end stream, that is from starting to beginning, make sure that all things are covered. Don't try to go for too much of complexity. So the thing is that don't be so particular that you are going down to every single micro step. Start with a high level view and then you can drill down to details. One of the common things is that you may do something which is a beautiful process but it has no value. So make sure that everything has an ultimate goal of showing a value. That is the most important thing. So always connect to outcomes. Ignoring the culture and people, this is one thing that is most commonly overlooked. It is just not only the tools and processes and your value, etc. It's actually about people. It's about the roles. It's about teamwork. It's about your organization. It's about your culture. Everything. All these things come into play. And you need to take care of all these things for you to have a successful value stream. And the important thing is that you don't want metrics that have no context. Every metric should have something, It has to lead to an improvement. Only then you need to have a metrics. Otherwise there is no use of it. And one-time exercise. So the thing is, you never create a value stream and forget about it. You always have to look at ways of improving your value streams. So that means it is constantly evolving. So these are things that are the problems that most of the organizations face, and you can look at these to try to see how you can avoid them. So here is a good example. You can just look at the screen and figure out what is happening. Before lead time 4 hours, now it is 45 minutes. Rework was 5%, now it is 0.5%. And then these are some of the key improvements, and these are the measurable outcomes. Just have a look at it. You can pause it and just look at the screen. Now that you looked at this particular diagram and saw what are the improvements and outcomes, let us look at the next topic. What are the benefits of the way you think? It's called as value stream thinking. Enhance visibility. You can see the complete workflow across departments, people who are involved. What are the bottlenecks? Where is things stopping? You can look at what are the opportunities for automating. So where there is manual work, why is something taking time? Where you can introduce AI or RPA or bots or whatever it is. Then the whole thing is always focus on customers. That's the most important stuff. What matters is ultimately the happiness and the satisfaction of your customer. And always have this mindset of continuous improvement. Built-in feedback, loop enabled, ongoing optimization, waste reduction. All these kinds of things are part of continuous improvement, and you need to have this kind of a thinking to make value stream successful. So in your organization, this is how you can actually implement it. It's a very small way of going about it. So you always start small. Engage everyone, all the stakeholders, whoever are there, it doesn't matter. Service does, technical team, management, the budget, approvers, your executives. Always map the current state. What is it right now? Don't worry about what it should be, etc. That is something different. You just need to identify what things are today. That's it. Then you identify what are the quick wins. What can you implement which will give you a win, you should be very positive about it. Something that is very easy, low hanging fruit, as you may want to call it. You can pull out those and identify them for quick wins. Now you design the future state, to be state, whatever it is. implement it, measure it, and then you scale it, and then repeat. Repeat means now your future state will now become the current state next time when you are going through it, and you are going to now try to find more wins. So this is the continuous part that you need to keep on working upon. So this way you can implement a value stream in your organization fairly quickly and fast. So finally, this is your competitive advantage. Look at how you as a working professional, as an ITSM professional, you can see beyond, individual process. You always were looking at incident management process, change management process, but now you are looking at things in a more cohesive manner. You are looking at scenarios and how do I satisfy or make the scenario work. That's nothing but a value stream. So I hope this video was helpful to you in being able to understand what exactly is a value stream. You can always write in the comments below what exactly your thoughts are on this. I appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good day.